I was sipping my morning latte, the city skyline glittering beyond my penthouse window, when my phone buzzed. A group chat ping. Can't wait to celebrate at the Willow Grand next month. It's going to be magical. The sender? My cousin, Jessica. I let out a soft, humorless laugh. Of all the places in the country, she had to choose that one. My hotel. My chain. My empire. Only she didn't know it. I set the mug down on the marble counter, the faint clink echoing in the quiet. The silk sleeve of my blouse brushed against my skin as I scrolled through the pictures she'd attached. Glossy shots of the ballroom, the crystal chandeliers, the manicured terrace where couples said, "I do," under the arch of white roses. The very spot where I was supposed to have my wedding. I felt the old ache stir, sharp at first, then dull, like a scar you forget until you press on it. I'd buried that chapter long ago under contracts, mergers, and endless nights of building something no one thought I could. Now here it was, tapping me on the shoulder through an iMessage. I glanced at my reflection in the black screen before it lit up again, poised, composed, but with a secret no one in that chat knew. The irony tasted sweeter than the latte. This time I would be the one holding the keys. 5 years ago, I was a different woman. No penthouse, no empire, just Emily Carter, a 26-year-old hopeless romantic with a Pinterest board full of wedding ideas and a man I thought was my forever. The Willow Grand was my dream venue. I'd toured it with my mom, fallen in love with its sweeping staircase, the warm amber light from the chandeliers, the way the terrace overlooked the lake like something out of a movie. I booked it a year in advance, signed the deposit check with shaky excitement, and left clutching a folder of sample menus like it was a newborn baby. 3 months before the wedding, I got the call. It wasn't the manager, it was my cousin Jessica. Her voice was sugary, but I knew that tone. I just wanted to let you know we're using the Willow Grand for our wedding. I know you had it booked, but, well, we sort of offered them double. I remember gripping the phone so hard my knuckles ached. Jessica, that's my venue. My date. She laughed lightly, as if I were overreacting. You'll find somewhere else. You're creative like that. This is just better for us. The room seemed to shrink. My chest burned. My hands trembled. My mom stood in the doorway, confusion knitting her brow as I fought to swallow the lump in my throat. By the time I hung up, my deposit was already being transferred to another venue, a dim, cramped banquet hall I couldn't afford to decorate into the dream I'd envisioned. I cried that night, not just over the venue, but over the realization that blood doesn't always mean loyalty. The next day, my grandmother Evelyn came by. She placed a small brass key in my hand. It was old, ornate, a little tarnished. "This was your grandfather's," she said. "He used to say, 'Own the door and no one can lock you out. One day, you'll have doors no one can take from you.'" I kept that key on my nightstand after the wedding fell apart. Yes, the wedding fell apart too, because the man who promised forever couldn't handle a woman who fought for herself. Losing that venue felt like the world collapsing. I didn't know it then, but it was the first brick in the foundation of everything I would build. The morning after I left my ex for good, I packed 2 suitcases, my grandmother's brass key, and $412 from my checking account into the back seat of my dented Honda Civic. I didn't have a plan, just a determination that felt heavier than the luggage. I landed a front desk job at a budget motel off the I-85. Faded carpet, flickering neon sign, and guests who paid in cash and never gave their real names. It was a far cry from the Willow Grand, but it was a start. At first, I was just the girl who smiled and handed out key cards. But I watched everything. How the managers scheduled staff. How they negotiated with vendors. How much money was wasted on bad maintenance calls. I took notes, literal ones, scribbled in the back of a pocket journal during my breaks. One night, after a particularly rough double shift, a guest checked in who changed everything. Linda Monroe, silver hair pulled into a sleek bun, sharp eyes that scanned a room like she owned it, because she did. She was the CEO of Monroe Hospitality Group, a regional hotel company. She noticed me juggling 3 ringing phones while checking in a busload of guests. "You ever think about management?" she asked. 2 weeks later, I was in her corporate office learning revenue reports, vendor contracts, and marketing strategies. Linda became my mentor, not just teaching me the business, but teaching me how to be taken seriously in rooms full of men twice my age who saw a young woman and assumed she was the assistant. I learned to read people, to negotiate without blinking, to ask for more than I thought I'd get, and then get it. The first big break came when Linda let me run a struggling boutique hotel in Charlotte. The carpets were stained, the occupancy rate was abysmal, and the staff morale was lower than the Yelp reviews. Within a year, I turned it into a local favorite, fresh branding, community events, and a wedding package that actually made people excited to get married there. It was the first time I felt power in my hands, not the kind you use to crush people, but the kind that opens doors. By 30, I bought my first property. By 32, I had 5. I worked like I was still that girl behind the front desk, except now the keys I handed out were to hotels with my name on the deed. But I kept my success quiet. My social media was a highlight reel of coffee shop selfies and vague captions. No boardrooms, no luxury vacations, no ribbon cuttings. Let them think I was just doing fine. I wanted the day they found out to be unforgettable. I just didn't know it would be Jessica who would walk right into the heart of it. The day of Jessica's anniversary party, the Willow Grand glistened like something out of a bridal magazine. White roses curled around the terrace arch, a string quartet warmed up in the corner, and the polished marble floors reflected the crystal chandeliers like a lake catching sunlight. I arrived an hour early, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to see every detail. Every polished brass door handle, every fresh flower arrangement, every uniformed server moving with quiet precision. My staff. My vision. My empire. I walked the lobby in 4-inch nude heels, my navy wrap dress swaying with each step. The brass key for my grandmother rested in my clutch, cool against my palm. Jessica swept in right on cue, hair in perfect waves, wearing a champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than the banquet chairs. Her husband, Mark, followed, all smiles and small talk. She spotted me near the front desk and blinked in surprise. "Emily? Oh my gosh. What are you doing here?" I smiled, the kind of smile you reserve for people who think they know the punchline. "Just making sure everything's perfect for you tonight." Her brow furrowed. "Wait, are you working here?" "Like, with the event staff." I let the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. "Something like that." Mark glanced between us, clearly sensing something beneath the polite surface. "Well, whoever's in charge, you guys did an amazing job. This place looks incredible." I tilted my head slightly. "Thank you. That means a lot." I could see the gears turning in Jessica's mind as she glanced at the manager approaching us. Tyler, my general manager, greeted me first. "Everything's set, Ms. Carter. The champagne is chilling, and the ballroom is ready whenever you are." Jessica's mouth opened, then closed. "Ms. Carter," she echoed. Tyler smiled. "Our owner, ma'am." The words hung in the air like a dropped glass that never quite hit the floor. Jessica's smile faltered. "Owner." I let the moment breathe, then nodded. "Yes. I own the Willow Grand. In fact, I own the entire Willow hospitality chain. 12 properties. Soon to be 15. Her eyes darted around, as if the walls themselves might contradict me. You own it?" "Yes." My voice was steady, warm, almost conversational. "You remember when you told me I'd find somewhere else for my wedding? Well, I did. It just happened to be every property you're standing in right now." Mark's jaw tightened, his polite smile replaced by something closer to respect, or maybe regret. Jessica let out a short, breathy laugh, but it was shaky. "Wow, Emily. I had no idea." That was the point. Behind her, relatives were beginning to notice the conversation, their curious glances bouncing between us. The room had shifted. I wasn't the cousin who got pushed aside anymore. I was the woman holding the keys. I gestured toward the ballroom. "Enjoy your evening. The staff is here to make sure everything runs flawlessly. Consider it a courtesy." Jessica swallowed hard. "Thank you," she murmured, but her voice had lost its sparkle. As she walked away, I caught my reflection in one of the gold-framed mirrors. Same eyes, same face, but the girl who once begged for her dream venue was gone. Now I owned the dream. Dinner service had just begun when Jessica found me again. This time, her tone was softer, almost cautious. "Emily, could we talk? Privately?" We stepped into one of the side lounges. Dim lighting, plush leather chairs, a fireplace flickering even though it was late spring. She perched on the edge of a chair, smoothing her gown like it might give her back the confidence she'd misplaced an hour ago. I wanted to say congratulations," she began. "You've clearly done really well for yourself." "That's kind of you," I said evenly. "But I'm guessing that's not why you pulled me aside." She hesitated, then sighed. "The truth is, we had some hiccups with our vendor payments, and if there's any way you could, I don't know, waive a few fees? It would really help us out." There it was, the ask. I leaned back, crossing my legs, the brass key warm in my palm. "Jessica, I'm happy to help, under a few conditions." Her eyes flickered, wary. "Conditions?" "Yes. First, I want you to remember how it felt to take something from someone who had less power than you. And then, I want you to promise you'll never do that to anyone again. Not in business, not in life." She shifted uncomfortably. "Okay, I can do that." "Second," I continued, "I want you to use your influence for something good. Sponsor a scholarship, mentor someone starting out, something that isn't about you being in the spotlight." Her lips pressed together, but she nodded. "Fine. And third," I said, my tone softening but not losing its edge, "I want you to understand that success doesn't always look the way you expect. Sometimes the quiet one at the table is the one paying for the meal." She let out a small, humorless laugh. Message received. I studied her for a moment, trying to gauge whether the words were landing in her heart or just bouncing off her pride. "If you can keep those 3 promises, your event tonight is on the house." Her head snapped up. "Seriously?" "Yes. Consider it a gift, not because you deserve it, but because I do." Something shifted in her eyes then. Not quite gratitude, but not pure embarrassment either. Maybe the beginning of humility. When we returned to the ballroom, Jessica's posture was a little less rigid. She even thanked a server as he refilled her glass, something I'd never seen her do. It wasn't redemption. Not yet. But it was a start. And for me, that was enough. The event went off without a single hitch. The champagne sparkled. The quartet played through the evening, and guests drifted out to the terrace under the glow of fairy lights. I stayed in the background, watching. Not out of distance, but out of choice. I'd learned that power didn't always need to be loud. Sometimes it was enough to simply be the one who had the final say. Jessica caught my eye a few times during the night. Once, she even gave me a small nod, not the performative kind for an audience, but a private acknowledgement between 2 people who knew what had just shifted. By the time the last guest left, the ballroom was quiet except for the soft hum of the cleaning crew. I stepped out onto the terrace alone, the lake glistening in the moonlight exactly as it had the first day I'd toured this place years ago. From my clutch, I pulled out my grandmother's brass key. It was warm from being in my hand all evening. I turned it over between my fingers, the metal catching bits of light from the chandeliers inside. Her voice echoed in my memory. "Own the door and no one can lock you out." Back then, I'd thought she was talking about property. Tonight, I understood she'd been talking about life. Owning the Willow Grand wasn't just about the title on the deed. It was about reclaiming the part of me that had been humiliated, dismissed, and underestimated. I slipped the key back into my clutch, took one last look at the terrace arch, and smiled. This place wasn't a reminder of what I'd lost anymore. It was proof of what I could build. As I walked back through the grand double doors, my heels clicking against the marble, I let the final line settle in my mind. The one that, if I were narrating my own life story, would fade out over a sweeping shot of this hotel's glowing facade. "Some people take your seat at the table. Me? I bought the whole damn table."